when you walk out of your tent or your camper at night, you look over your fire, the coals are just there. It's so quiet. You can hear the river in it. Whatever that is, if you can pull that out and put that into music, that is the Ozark Sound.
JD, we appreciate you having us down here and welcoming us into your studio, your workspace. What do you call this spot?
This it is the workspace.
There it is.
This is so this is Mulberry Records. This is where we send off the vinyl. This is where I do some writing and recording. This is where I entertain guests, friends of mine that want to have some stiff drinks and talk about things we love. And you said it already. Everybody, I had needed and wanted a place that was mine that I could have. And I have a wife and a young daughter, and just sometimes you need a place that you can go and work and not be distracted. So that's what this is.
Yeah.
But it's a place that I have a lot of dreams for, and
It's pretty new, right? Like, I mean, you've only leased this place for now like 2 months. Is that what you said?
Just a little while.
So you're still very much like feeling it out.
Yeah.
And kind of deciding like what it should be, what it's talking to you, like what it's telling you it wants to be, maybe.
That's right. Yeah. We talk a lot. When I'm in here alone in this warehouse, I do a lot of talking.
We're going to talk about your story. We want to hear, obviously, how you've come to where you are today in your career and how you've gotten to the point that you're at. Obviously, if people have been listening, they've checked you out before, or they follow you, they see, you're doing a lot of stuff. You just had an album come out not too long ago, Long Way From Home. And man, it just seems like you're popping off. Like,
thanks, man.
Looking in, it's like, dude, this guy, he's doing it. Like, he's figuring it out, man. He's getting out there. So we're going to talk your story, but I also want to explore some, like, a little bit of the intersection of hunting and fishing with storytelling, songwriting, just creative process, and like kind of go there. And so that's what I was thinking. Obviously, this is a little bit different episode for us. We talk a lot about hunting and fishing, but we're going to kind of mix in some music and your story with that, and just growing up here in the Ozarks. And so I guess to start, maybe we revisit that question of,
here it is.
Do you consider the place that you grew up, Fort Smith, the Ozarks?
Yeah, no. And it's because we are technically in the River Valley. So Fort Smith sits at the River Valley region that is basically the foothills, on the banks of the foothills of the Ozarks.
That's right.
So I don't technically count. Boo. I suck. But we're so much better than the state of Oklahoma.
Let's go ahead and throw some shade over there. Hey, y'all catch this. Catch the shade.
Yeah. So anyways, so Fort Smith is strictly a River Valley town.
All right, I'm gonna hit you with a little bit of a different angle on this question.
Bring it. I love angles.
So, geographically speaking,
oh
no.
Gosh.
Culturally speaking, are we in the Ozarks in Fort Smith? Because there's boundaries to different. It just depends on how you define the Ozarks.
Right.
Culturally, geographically. I mean,
so well, and you would have to tag on to that question whether Arkansas is a southern state or if it is a Midwestern state.
Also a fair question.
And
you also have to decide if geographically you count the river valley because you know that the Ozarks were formed as a valley because its rivers running through a plateau to make a mountain range. And this is just the southernmost border of the plateau, making it the foothills of the Ozarks, therefore the Ozarks.
A lot to unpack here.
Gosh dang, Kyle. You always were a smart man. I'm going to say that the state of Arkansas, this is a cop-out answer, but when you're coming over the Mississippi River into eastern Arkansas, that is the South.
I would agree with that.
Where you gentlemen reside could be argued as it is the Ozarks, but could somehow land in Midwestern territory. Fort Smith is very much a it doesn't really know what it is because you know, our economy is like completely built on the backs of eastern Oklahoma folks that come into the big city of Fort Smith to do their work, to do to dine, whatever.
We got some great restaurants here, man. Y'all come over to this TGI Fridays.
Oh man, a lot of people like Red Lobster. Gosh dang it. I was on a roll there. I don't know what we are, man. We suck. Fayetteville's way cooler. Everybody knows that. But the truth is that everybody wants, there is an argument of like people don't really know where the state of Arkansas is anyway.
Yeah.
And then they don't know how to classify it. But the truth is that we were part of the Civil War. That makes us technically a southern state.
Yeah, we are below the Mason-Dixon line.
Yes, we are below that.
To dive into your story a little bit here, to go back and talk about, you know, obviously, you know, we see you today as here's this successful musician. Here's this guy who he's touring, he's out, he's doing shows, he's opening up for big names, he's doing his own headline shows. Take me back to the beginning, like growing up here in Fort Smith. What were some of your earliest memories, and then earliest influences, maybe on like your musical style?
Sophomore year of college, when I heard Chris Stapleton for the first time, and I'll back up and say, like, my dad despises country music, does not like it, so I wasn't raised on it. I grew up listening to like California singer-songwriters, so. The only a buddy of my dad's went out to California, came back to Fort Smith, and had 2 CDs that he had found out there and gave them to my dad. And one was Jack Johnson's Brushfire Fairy Tales, and the other one was Room for Squares, John Mayer. And so that was like my entire upbringing, was just those 2 CDs, going to like baseball practice. You know, a couple years later, you had Continuum. I mean, that's all we listened to. It was just like dudes playing guitar, singer-songwriters. Norah Jones, Amos Lee. So that was kind of the only thing I knew.
Yeah.
But then once, fast forward to sophomore year of college, I'm sitting there at the dinner table and I pull up this video of Chris Stapleton singing Amanda. I actually forget who wrote it, but there's a lot of great versions. Don Williams does a good version. But I'm sitting there with my dad, and we both just look at each other like, holy cow. I think he was playing it on the Grand Ole Opry. And I was like changed, you know, and wanted to kind of start to dive into that.
So at this point, you had already noticed this thing in you that like I'm doing things that people are noticing that I have some kind of talent in this area, and at this point, you kind of hear this and you're like, man, you know what? Like I want to explore this a little bit. Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, I'm not doing a great. I'm kind of jumping everywhere, but like basically, I all during high school was like getting better at guitar and piano, and I would sing into my iPhone's like voice memo. And I remember coming downstairs and I had played, I think it was Coldplay's The Scientist. I had like done a piano version of that on my voice memo, showed it to my folks, and they were like, this is not terrible. This is okay.
Not bad, JD.
By God, you finally made us proud. And that was kind of a turning point, because it was like, okay, maybe I can do this. A friend of mine asked me if I would sing with her at our graduation, our high school graduation. I agreed. We tried out, got accepted, and we played the Head and Heart, Rivers and Roads at our Southside High School graduation in 2014 in front of several thousands of people, and I was hooked. It was like the culmination of everything that had happened up from junior high to high school, just, casually doing music, and then singing and playing guitar in front of all these people. And I was like, man, this is really cool.
At what point did you really kind of take it and be like, man, college is great, but like I want to do this for a living?
So I had a buddy that had just moved to Nashville, and I would get up on Friday morning at 5 a.m., drive to Nashville. I would skip class on Fridays, and I would try to record all weekend, and then I'd be back for class on Monday morning.
So this is like during school.
Yeah.
You're taking off for the weekend, going to Nashville.
Yeah. And I did that off and on from sophomore year to senior year. It's like a 7.5 hour drive if you do one stop from here to Nashville. And you have to do one stop for gas, but I got pretty close one time to making it the whole way. I was going very fast. But it wasn't going anywhere. The guy I was working with was not delivering the product I needed, and wasn't helping me record. And so these weekends were kind of a waste. But looking back now, I was learning so much, and I was meeting people, and I was learning the town, and I was falling in love with the town too. And senior year of college, I'm on Instagram, and I see a guy post, a music guy that I follow and respect. He posted a bunch of his buddies all hanging out in Nashville, and I was clicking on all their profiles, like kind of scoping them out, and one of the guys in his profile said producer. And I was like, at the time I knew nothing. And I was like, I really need a producer because this guy that I'm working with stinks. So I messaged him on Instagram, and I was working for at that time I was doing school and working for a logistics company in town that also had an office in Nashville. So I would figure out a plan to basically go to Nashville to work for this company in their Nashville office. And then as soon as I'd get off work, I would go hang out with the producer. And basically we had coffee, and I showed him the songs I had been working on. And I was like, dude, I need help. I think there's something here, but they're just we're not engineering it correctly. And he's also never turning in the work. So what can you do to help? We record Smoke Out the Fire, my first EP. It was 5 songs. One of those songs was Brown Haired, Blue Eyed Baby. And that was released in November of 2018. And I played a show just not too far from here at a venue that's not there anymore. It was called Harry's. I did a album release party. The newspaper said Fort Smith guy releases CD party.
Fort
They
Smith
didn't
guy.
even
That's how I should have introduced you, not the Arkansas kid.
Fort Smith guy.
Fort
Fort
Smith
Smith guy. Like they called it like a CD party. I was just like, no.
Give me some credit here.
So, anyways,
A CD party. So,
But-
brown hair, blue eyed girl though was like that was one great job, incredible song.
Thank you.
But
man.
that was like the kind of the big one that really got you started, right? Like it went out, people loved it.
Well-
Even Kyle, you were saying you were listening to it before you even knew that we were buddies with JD.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it came up on, I mean, it had been years ago, but a new country music for you or
Yeah.
some type of page like that on Spotify. And it was saved because I don't save very many songs. And so I'd listened to it a lot. And then maybe a year ago when you're like, oh, we've got this guy, JD, we're going to have him be our intro music for the podcast. I was like, sweet.
Yeah.
Looked you up and was like, oh, shoot. I like some of his songs.
I
Actually,
know.
like a lot of his songs, but Brown Hair, Blue Eyed
Thank you,
Baby
man.
is like, it's like, I love that one.
Thank you, man. Well, so it didn't start off like that. I mean, I put it out as a single ahead of the EP, and nothing really ever happened. But I played that CD party. We had like 250 people come out. And this is like coming from like 3 years before I was playing the Starbucks.
Yeah.
So that was the moment you're talking about where it was like, holy cow. There are tons of people here compared to what I had been doing, where I had never played a show that was a ticketed show that people came out to, and we sold the room out. And it was just song after song. Like everybody was up right on us at the base of the stage, and I was just like, man, this is awesome.
This is cool.
This is so fun. All my friends are here. We're having a great time. And then we did it again. And then we did the next year we did a Christmas show, and we did almost doubled that number. And it was like, man, this is insane. But that's kind of like, so I figured out I could do music. I had already graduated. My wife graduated with her nursing degree, and we decided we were going to move to Nashville. We loved Nashville. We had honeymooned in Nashville. Like, it was our favorite town. We always would go there anytime we had time for vacation. We just, even if music didn't work out, we loved the town. And so as soon as she graduated, we packed up and moved. And that was a really hard season because I had never left home, had never spent much time away from family. I had really, during college, gotten involved in the Fort Smith community and grown to love it. And so that's why in my album, Long Way From Home, there's a song, like the whole album is about missing home. But there's a song at the bottom that you have said a couple times called Different Kind of Simple Life, that it basically in the lyrics talks about my buddies pushing me, saying, go, because we're all going to be here when you get back. And that's the sad truth. I'm jumping ahead, but like I was talking to a friend of mine, and that's the sad truth about all this, is that I'm back now and nobody's here. And
Meaning your buddies, they've left, they've gone off, and
they've
done other
left,
stuff.
and so that like that's kind of like ushering in my next record a little bit, because it's this realization that life is really difficult and life is ever changing, and you really cannot bank on anything to stay the way that you hope and want it to. And you can't be mad because it changes, because people have their own goals and dreams. And that was a tough realization whenever turning 28 years old and moving back here and realizing like now I'm the young gun that is starting a family, and now I'm going to have to one day like give back to the younger guys that are coming up.
Yeah.
But back in 2019, my wife and I move. We work really hard to build a community. I was working at that logistics company and kind of used that to jump over to Nashville because they had an office there. A couple months goes by, I realized that it's not going to work for me to maintain this job and also do music, because I was constantly coming back to Fort Smith because that's where I had my shows booked at the time. I had no Nashville shows. So I quit there and got a job at a coffee shop. And 3 months later, COVID hits.
Ooh.
And Nashville just absolutely cratered and exploded into a million pieces. And I remember it was a weird day at the coffee shop that day because at that time, the rumors were going like crazy. No one was going out. And it was only 3 of us working this big coffee shop. And only half of it was open, and I could just feel it. Something was like weird. And my boss finally at the end of the day like pulled me in and was like, this was Frothy Monkey in the Nations. Good place. Daniel and I have shared many of the farmer's breakfast there. 2 eggs, side of sourdough toast. What was it? Potatoes? Anyways, I digress. Yeah, they pulled me in the back and they were like, man, we're going to have to let you go. And I was like, that was the first time I'd ever been fired.
Oh, man, that's tough.
I like had that lump in the back of my throat. I was like, Dad, gum, like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I hop in the truck, drive home. I lived really close in this little neighborhood called Sylvan Park. And my landlord, I lived in a little grandmother's suite right in the backyard of this guy's house. And he's one of my best friends. And he was out front. And he owned a landscape company. And I pull up to the driveway and I was like, dude, it's getting real out there. I just lost my job. I may have to come do some landscaping for you, cut some grass. And we were laughing. And he texted me later and was like, hey, man, if you're serious, I've got a job for you. And it's not going to be cutting grass, but it'll be something I think you'll get into. And a week later, I start working for a company about 30 minutes south of Nashville in a town called Nolensville. And I show up, jump in a truck with Nico, Alfredo, and Jose. And for a year and a half, we drive all over Nashville, running irrigation, planting trees, digging trenches. We did the entire landscaping at the Nashville airport. I planted, in a matter of like 2 weeks, I probably planted over like 500 plants.
Jeez. It's a grind.
It was wild. And I had never done manual labor. So here I am, 7.5 hours away from home, working with 4 dudes from Mexico, 2 guys from El Salvador, and 2 guys from Dominican Republic, slinging a shovel. And I mean, I was broken. I was really down.
Was this rock bottom for you where you're kind of like, I need to do something different? Like, I got to change something? Or were you in it and you're like, no, you know what? I'm doing this, an ends to a mean, like, or means to an end. I've got to do this so I can make music work.
Well, it started like that, right? Because nobody knew how long COVID was going to last. So at the beginning, it was really easy to be like, I'll go work. This will be fun. And then 6 months goes by, and then a year goes by, and then a year and a half goes by. And it was just like, anger and depression and being so mad at like the situation. Like, why am I, because I would have to get up at 5:50, throw on my clothes that I wore the day before that absolutely smelled like wild. Throw it on. It's so funny because I was driving. I had purchased a Ram ProMaster van that I was renovating to be my like travel dude van / tour van. And that was my daily driver my whole time in Nashville with no music industry going on. And so I would get up at 5:50, throw on my nasty clothes, jump in this massive van, and then drive 30 minutes. And I had timed it perfectly to where I would pull in at the lot right at 6:29, punch the card, jump in the car with Nico. And Nico hated me for some reason. I don't know. It was just like drama within the Mexicans. And I mean, it was just like, I was just getting broken. That's what it was. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because I thought I had it all figured out, and I just absolutely got shoved in the dirt, literally. And, it made me a better man. But all during that time, I was writing. I have on my phone somewhere. I have the recordings of me like humming "Long Way from Home," and you can hear the dudes like speaking Spanish in the background. So like I didn't give up on the writing thing, but I was like super discouraged. And I think that's what drove me to write the songs I wrote. I mean, Daniel was working in music here, and I mean, there was a day that he and I met and we were going to try to write. We had become buddies. And we finally were going to get together to write. And we got together, and I didn't even have like, I had like 2 lines, and that's just how co-writing goes sometimes. Like, you just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, it's just some days you got it, some days you don't. But before we tried to sit down and write, he and I had like a multiple hour conversation of just being like, this town, it sucks, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Like, music is so hard. I'm not making any money. And later that day, I just locked myself in my little studio in my house, and it like hit me all at one time. And I wrote American Millionaire, and it was just like, I'm on the road today just trying to make this life they said wouldn't come true, come true.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do this. And it was like, it started happening, and like songs started coming, and we were taking piles of these limbs that we were loading on the trailer to take to the dump. And I was like getting this rhythm, like, well, I thought if I could run a little bit faster, jump a little higher, we might up and fly away. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
That turned into Heartaches After Heartbreak. And then Different Kind of Simple Life was about my buddy that grew up in eastern Oklahoma that had kind of a rough upbringing. And there's that in verse 2, it's like, I bet you wish you had all day long to strum a guitar and sing sad songs. Boy, you're sure going to miss these days. Come by the bar and say hello. We're raising hell and shots of Patron. I've got the lyrics wrong, but boy, you're going to miss these days, whatever.
Yeah.
That's like all my buddies that I used to drink beers with after work. That was them saying, go do this thing, because you're only going to get one shot. You might as well try it. And Fort Smith's always going to be here. And, like Sleepy Night in Nashville, that I had gone on a walk in the park in my neighborhood, came back, sat on the front steps. I look over, and on the back porch, this guy just lights up a doobie, and the moon was a full moon that night, and the tornado had just ripped through Nashville the week before COVID hit in 2020.
Yeah, that's right.
And, it's just like people were just like down, man. A lot of, I was crying all the time. Like, there were some days I would drive home from the landscape company just absolutely beating the roof of my van, just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, this is like, if I want to work landscaping, I can go back to Fort Smith, Arkansas. I've got a college degree. This is so stupid, and I don't know why I stayed with it, but somehow I stayed with it, and probably through the help of my wife, and she was working as a nurse during COVID, and that was crazy in Nashville. Probably just, you know, a lot of people that were there for me during that time that just helped push me. But I basically had 10 songs, the 10 songs over there on the board. And I called up a producer friend of mine, the same one that helped me record Smoke Out the Fire, Thomas Doolin. And I said, hey, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I've got 10 songs, and I need you to set aside 2 weeks for me because I got to get out of here. And I quit the job that day. And that was hard, too, because I had built such a good relationship with Alfredo and Jose and Nico. Like, I mean, I went to Alfredo's kids' birthdays, the whole piñata, everything. Like, I mean, it was legit.
You were doing it.
I was doing it. That was why I learned Spanish really well. So it was a great season. But I had to stick with music. And I got together, I formed a company, got together some families that had really shown love for my music, and we put together a company, and that company basically funded Long Way From Home. And it took a year to make, and nothing really was happening. But I planned a Christmas show winter of 2021. And somehow the poster for my Christmas show ended up on the desk of an agent at William Morris Endeavor, a big booking company in Nashville. And I get a message on I get a follow on Instagram. And I just was like, well, I'm going to take advantage of this. So I messaged her back and was like, hey, I don't know why you followed me, but I would really like to buy you coffee if you've got the time. We sit down for coffee. I show her a Long Way From Home. She gives it to her superior. A couple months later, I get signed by William Morris Endeavor. They send it over to Red Light Management that manages Chris Stapleton and Dave Matthews Band. They're a large management company. And a couple months later, they signed me. We put out the first half of Long Way From Home, and I start touring in July of 2022 for the first time ever. Touring, you know, with a band and doing the real thing. And it was, I mean, just wild. I was like, I mean, it's a weird moment when you've worked so long and so hard for something, and then you wake up and you're doing what you had always hoped you were doing.
Right.
You don't realize it. And it's also hard to be in the moment and be grateful for it. So it's still like sinking in for me even now. 2023 starts and we're guns a-blazing. Our first show was January 7th this year. We opened for Old Crow Medicine Show in Birmingham. And I've done, whether solo or with the full band, I've done over 100 shows this year.
Dang.
And we opened for Parker McCollum, Hank Williams Jr., Dwight Yoakam, Old Crow Medicine Show, Ashley McBride. I mean, what?
Yeah.
What? It was wild.
You played at the Amp not too long ago, right? Like,
yeah.
You were up there calling the hogs on stage.
Oh, you got to do that.
You got to.
Come on, baby. It's just been an absolutely wild year. And so now we're sitting here in 2023, December. Couple bros just hanging out. And I have a lot to be grateful for. I think we all do, but just because the grind gets hard sometimes doesn't mean that there's not something on the other side. It may not look exactly like we had hoped, but there's always a route, whether through or around, for you to find your footing.
Yeah.
And I found my footing. So I'm not unique. I'm not special. It's just, at the end of the day, you have to, if you're doing music, if you're doing any kind of business, it's a small business when it starts, and you have to create a product that other people want.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, your hope is that you put enough time and energy and love into that product to make it so special, and that it's special to other people. And so that's what I've tried to do with my music. And that's what I hope to do for as long as Mulberry Records exists. Just share stories with people and love on people and help them if they're going through a hard time. Help them, know that they can get through that hard time. So,
how did you come up with the name Mulberry Records? Because I'll ask and add to that. Growing up here in Fort Smith, for me, a lot of the times I was out in the Ozarks, spending time hunting and fishing, was on the Mulberry River.
Yeah.
And that's like where that was like our outlet, my family, that was where we'd go. And so to me, the Mulberry holds a real special place in my heart. But for you, just that name, Mulberry and Mulberry Records, where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately where it comes from. Mulberry River holds a very special place in my heart as well. Mulberry was the name of my first dog, a black lab that my dad named after Mulberry River. And tragically, she she died in a hunting accident that was
Oh, no.
really bad. I won't go into that, but
Sounds like a story. Uh-oh.
I have to laugh because otherwise I'll cry. It was so bad. But that's where that name comes from. So, anyways.
Gotcha.
You had spoken on the potential of losing your values in a city like Nashville, and man, so many other things weaving into your kind of whole saga of high school to now, of touring and growing and building a recognizable product that is really good country music. Where do you feel like the Mulberry, growing up in Fort Smith, being a duck hunter, a fly fisherman, all of that, how do those influences kind of play into the style of music that you produce and write and create for the JD Clayton image of singer-songwriter country music?
Yeah, dude, that's a great question. So I don't think I realized that all of these things had like influenced me until I was in the depths of the landscape job in Nashville, and I started listening to a lot of different music. My job in the company was to drive a dump truck, a Ford 450, from Nolensville to Franklin to pick up trees, mulch, whatever, and then drive it to anywhere in Nashville where the job needed it. So I was in this truck nonstop. Some dude had left a little Bluetooth USB device inside this the 450, and I would listen to music nonstop. and I was listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival. I was listening to the band. I was listening to Leonard Skinner. I was listening to music that basically classic rock between 1969 and 1972. And I had been raised on all that stuff. Apart from Jack Johnson, John Mayer, my dad loved late 60s, early 70s rock and roll. James Taylor. So I basically spent all that time just obsessing with those bands. And what I realized was that a lot of these sounds that I was hearing really identify with where I'm from. And you can go really deep into that, but like the culture, especially in Fort Smith, like Fort Smith's culture is very much a rock music centered thing. Dudes love driving their trucks with the windows down, blasting Freebird. Why is that? It's like, so that started this thing in my head. I was like, wait a second. So what is it about where we're from that loves this type of music? So that kind of opened the door for me to go, all right, I need to take a step back. Because during a few of the years I was in Nashville, I was putting out music that I was just trying to kind of find my way, putting out things that were not really me. But I was just kind of trying to find where I fit. And I later had to like take those songs down because I just didn't feel like they, I think I was trying to be somebody I really wasn't. And so that's what Long Way From Home was. It was like the realization that I've got to go back and get in the studio and make songs that feel like where I'm from and feel like that spirit, that energy of growing up in Western Arkansas. An Arkansas sound, if you will. And so that's what I was trying to do, was just like really get back to my roots, stop trying to be somebody I'm not, and lean into the sound that I know and that I know all the guys around here love and know.
Yeah. So follow up to that with some of the influences. Appalachian style country, hugely popular right now.
Yeah.
Tyler Childers,
Yeah.
etc. That style of music followed the Red Dirt era. And we're just going to not talk about like radio style country music.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to. And I imagine you don't want to for, all that much either.
I will for the sake of this show if y'all like that.
No. Don't love it.
We'll have to delete this episode. No.
And so that style, the Tyler Childers, etc., super popular.
Yeah.
Following the Red Dirt movement of like back to the roots. Like that's Texas though, right?
Right.
We fall right in the middle of those two.
Right.
Demographically, culturally, etc.
Geographically.
If you could describe or explain the Arkansas or the Ozark Sound, what would it sound like?
Good question. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where I struggle with like defining what this is, because
and this is your definition. It doesn't have to be like the definition for everybody.
Yeah, right.
So for you,
in growing up in a town that is on the border of eastern Oklahoma, people like a certain type of music here. Like I was saying, that tons of Oklahoma folks do business and work here. They love Red Dirt Country.
Mm-hmm.
We're only 4 hours from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
sure.
This state really is close to all that. So that's why I struggle. And that's why the argument I made to myself early on was like, Arkansas is such a boiling pot, more so than anywhere else, if we break it down geographically, for all kinds of music. Because north of us, I think a true Ozark Sound is an artist by the name of Nick Shoulders.
Hmm.
It's actually not too much different than kind of like the rough and rugged Appalachian sound that we know. But it's like, I don't know, man, you can hear the river in it.
Mm.
When you go camping at Devil's Den, just north of here, there's a few I think it's like campground A, right on the banks of that river that goes through there. I think maybe it's Lee Creek. When you walk out of your tent or your camper at night, and it's that cool, crisp, it's so quiet. Your fire, you look over your fire, the coals are just there. That is the Ozark Sound.
Mm.
And if you can pull that, whatever that is, if you can pull that out and put that into music, you can't explain what that is. Because I can set up a guitar and a banjo and put it in front of a mic and let somebody play it, and we can argue all day what kind of music that is. It is what the artist does and where they're able to capture that feeling and that essence and put it into that music. So I don't necessarily think that I'm a great representation of that. I think Nick Shoulders does it the best. I'm a big fan of him. But I do think that I can be a vessel for what I would call just an Arkansas sound.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love Eastern Arkansas. I love the Ozarks. I love to drive down to the Washita's from here. I love the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that it is a boiling pot for so much. You have Memphis. You have music out of Missouri. You have Appalachian music coming over from North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. You have country out of Nashville. You have the blues out of the Delta. You have, New Orleans. You have Western swing. Everything kind of like comes right. People don't even know where Arkansas is. It's right smack dab in the middle, dadgummit. And so that's why I'm like, I talk to my team, every single album is going to be different. It's not going to be the same. It's always going to change because ultimately it's about the songs. That's what's most important. And then after that, we're just going to have a party and we hope everybody comes.
Absolutely.
So JD, you had talked a little bit on how it's important to have a sound from your region. With Arkansas being in the middle of the country, you're pulling influences from Southern California singer-songwriter, red dirt country, early rock and roll, CCR, which is like kind of Southern rock, all the way to Appalachian style, banjos and fiddles and kind of old mountaineering style. And you'd said that the sound of Arkansas, at least the sound of the Ozarks, and then even other parts of Arkansas, is the quiet. It's the fire at the end of a campsite. You could go on and say it's the turkey hunt on hour 4, and it's a cool, dark, foggy forest, that kind of thing. For you, as you're trying to capture the sound of Arkansas, what are, 3, 4, 5 maybe visual influences you're pulling from to try to capture that sound, as well as audio influences? And you could ping back and forth. You don't have to go audio and visual for both. But if you're thinking the sound of Arkansas as a whole image, how would you define it?
Man, I don't know. So I grew up going camping, a lot with my granddad. And so we constantly camped in the Devil's Den area, and all over Arkansas. But something about all the like imagery around camping is what I draw from. So like a campfire, fireflies, the sound that acorns make when you like on a fall crisp day where you like step on leaves and like smash an acorn, a stream rolling by. Like, I mean, just, I don't know, dude. Most of the sounds, when I'm like writing songs, I'm trying to picture a weekend trip with my best buds when we went out camping. We're sitting around the fire telling stories, or we're talking about hard times we're going through right now, and or something cool that happened in our life, and we're cheering each other on and like encouraging each other. Whatever that is, that moment where you wake up the next day, it's Saturday morning, you got to go back home to real life after a Friday night of camping. And you're like texting your buds, and it's that feeling of like, man, I'll never forget that trip. And it was just a Friday night camp out.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like, it's just something about being around the fire with your homies brings something out of you that I try to capture whatever that feeling is in my music. Because when you guys are sitting around, I'm not suggesting that you listen to my music, but
we do. To be very clear, all the time.
If you listen to my music in your truck or wherever you're going, like, I want it to take you somewhere. And it's very subjective. So when you're listening to my music, it might take you somewhere that means something totally different. But when I listen to it, I'm thinking of like, when you're around a fire, the DJ, whoever that person is, their phone, it's very important, because if you're going to listen to music, sometimes it's nice to just listen to outside, and I prefer that. But if you're going to listen to music, the vibe has to be immaculate to match.
Immaculate vibe.
It has to be immaculate to match where we're at.
So 2 thoughts on that. 1, you're absolutely right. I'm going to follow up on that. 2, Daniel is our keeper of music for Immaculate Vibes. And I have a memory where we're all sitting in a field on some 4-wheelers looking up to the night sky in the Ozarks the evening before a bear hunt the next morning.
Yeah, this is the night before opening day.
This was a couple years ago.
Yeah, I remember this.
And Kyle and I were giving Daniel a bunch of crap.
As always.
As always. Because we love him. He's our dearest friend. For the playlist he had picked. And he got through, 1 or 2 songs before I was like, oh, I'm for this. And like, we're here now. And it's awesome. So that was a story. That was point 2. Point 1.
I got chills. I was just there with
dude,
you.
it's awesome.
Dude.
The importance
It's a little cold in this room too, so it feels like we're at a bear hunt.
The importance of music or art or literature or stories, or even, it sounds weird, but like in the modern digital age, like coverage coming from your area is, I think, really, really important for your sense of place and personhood. And even how you structure your own identity, like within the world that you navigate, I think it's really, really valuable. So you were saying you may not listen to my music or not. Kyle and I definitely do. Daniel definitely does. So at least the 3 of us listen to your music a lot.
It means a lot. Thank you.
We love it. And the reason I was asking you that question, trying to describe the sound of Arkansas, or the sound of the Ozarks, or the sound of your music or whatever, is because there are so many places in this world that are represented for music and art and whatever that are phenomenal. Like, great representation. I love it. I draw from it. I get something from it. But there are certain aspects of your song and your style and your sound that I'm listening to on the way to the deer stand. I'm like, that's it. Like, that's what I'm going for. And I'm recognizing, even as you're sharing your story, like, I grew up on CCR and Leonard Skinner and whatever else because of my dad. And I grew up with this ideal of like, what the outdoors is and what it means to be a man and what it means to be a family man and what it means to have values and all of this stuff because of who my mom and my dad and my grandparents are and my community. And there's so much value in bringing that to a space that's historically fairly underrepresented because it's Arkansas.
Yeah.
And y'all have heard Clay Newcomb's podcast on the Arkansas Image, and it's like, the nobody state in the middle of the country, and I think a lot of people are like, actually, we have a lot to offer, and we're
Yeah.
kind of valuable in this space. But hearing the sound of Arkansas in my ears as I'm going to, I don't know, hunt deer, catch a trout, or go camping with some buddies, or as we're driving down to interview you in Fort Smith, and we're gonna talk stories and whatever else, like that's important, and it's valuable.
Yeah.
And maybe before Kyle asks some more questions, this is just an encouragement, but it's like, I love hearing the sound of where I came from and what I grew up on, and that being represented in a way that's speaking to like the next generation of people from Arkansas. And it's really fun.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
that means so much, man. Thank you, dude.
I want to ask you on the coattails of what Kyle just said there. When you're talking about taking those moments and you think about, I'm sitting around the fire, I'm watching the water come over those rocks, I'm hearing it, I'm feeling it. When you try to take that moment, capture it, and then put that into a song and the feeling that you have in that moment and try to pass that on to somebody, how does the process look of creatively taking that and writing it into words so that other people can relate to that, and then making it sound good? Like, what is that process of taking emotions and putting them into words for other people to feel?
Well, it's tough. It's tough to answer because it's tough to explain even to myself. I struggle with how to explain how it happens, but it's kind of like magic in a way, and I'm not trying to be funny. It's just, I think that's why people, once they write one song, they keep writing. Because it's like when I wrote Long Way From Home, we're sitting there on the front steps of this apartment complex. We had just finished running the irrigation. And it was lunchtime, and as soon as we finished lunch, we always took a siesta, and Alfredo was just passed out next to me. And I was so mad at life. And I pulled out my notes app on my phone, and I started typing, I read the letter you sent this morning. I drank my coffee and imagined you were here. The weather's good, but they say rain's coming. Will you buy me a plane ticket out there? Then I started humming, and I got this like tune that I kind of liked. And then I kept writing, and I could use a timeout or two from this playground, this joke that I was living in Nashville. The line goes, I don't even want to hear another sound. Like, I'm just sick of this. And, but I can't just stop now. I've come too far. And then the chorus of Long Way From Home. Mama, I know I'm a long way from home, but this old dirt road just keeps on going, and these dreams of mine just don't end. I sure miss you. Don't you cry. You know, it's a super hard song to sing, and it was extremely hard to sing. I would just get choked up every single time I tried to sing it. But I can't explain to you like where that came from. I have it in my phone still. This is the first day I wrote it on my notes, and that was 2 years ago. I still have the first voice recording. As soon as I typed those words, the dudes finished their nap. Nico got a call that we needed to run to the next job. We'd load up in the truck, and I took out my phone and hummed what I had just written on my phone. And you can hear him speaking Spanish in the background. And I got home that day, grabbed my guitar, and had it done in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Just like, it was like, and it was just a couple weeks later or I don't know, it may have been days later. That's when I called the producer. I was like, I've got it,
Yeah.
and it's time to make an album.
So when you get to that point and you've gone through that process of a little bit of magic, a little bit of just raw emotion, a little bit of just talking about what's going on in your life, when you get to that point where you write it down, you've got a tune, even if it's just a semblance of a tune, like just something to go off of, at what point do you know, or how does that look when you get to the point where you're like, oh, like I've got it. Like what is it that stands out?
I mean, so it starts like you're just strumming on your guitar or you're playing. I love like playing my piano and just like playing chord structures and, you know, playing things that sound pretty. And all of a sudden I'll like play something. I'm like, that's interesting. I'll hum something. And sometimes I'll just like say a random word in the mumbling that then strikes like an idea. I mean, that's how Heartaches After Heartbreak started. I mean, I was just like piling on this brush onto this trailer, and I was like, down, 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 and then I was like, well, that's kind of a cool little thing. If I could jump, you know, and it's just mumbling, and you're like, run a little faster. And then I'm like, well, that's cool. So I pull out my phone immediately, try not to forget it, hum it really quick in the voice memo, then I'm still going. And I'm like, oh, well, now I refine it. Then like, and then all of a sudden, 2 hours later, I've got like a chunk.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, okay, these words are cool. What if the story is like this dude, you know, he's like, just had a bad breakup. He's mad at this girl. Okay, now I can write this chorus. And it's just like a slow, like kind of process where you just like start to chip away. You come up with a line. Then you have to say in your mind, yes or no. Do I like this line? Am I going to keep it? Yes. Okay, great. How can I refine it? That's a stupid word. Pull that out. Move it around. Now I've got to write verse 2. And it can't be, you know, the same as verse 1. Do I also want to change up the structure of how it flows? Because I don't like Nashville standard A-B songwriting, just like keep it all the same. Like when I go into verse 2, like my next album that I'm almost done with, we basically intentionally changed the form on every single song so it doesn't match like what is supposed to be, or what people are used to in songwriting forms. We finish the chorus, we're going to jump right into the solo.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to do verse 2, and then we're going to do another solo or a bridge or whatever. Like, you listen to some of the Skynyrd songs, the form is wild. Go listen to the song, The Ballad of Curtis Lowe. Literally one of the most underrated songs of all time. Definitely the most underrated Skynyrd song. That is a masterpiece of a song. And that, I mean, when I'm going duck hunting early in the morning, I'm putting on Ballad of Curtis Lowe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's getting me pumped.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No.
I mean, that's basically, it's a series of like mumblings that could jar your mind to have a thought that then leads to an idea of the beginning of a story that you can quickly write. And then the songwriting is the process of refining that story down 100 times till you get to a song that can be clear and understood by anybody.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I think is so powerful about music, and then even just in general, like if you think about the importance of storytelling in really all of humanity,
Yeah.
and how that has carried on history and culture and who we are, identity, all of these things that even now we still do so much storytelling through different forms of media, podcasts, videos, music, print, writing, all these things that like they're so important to us. And it's really, storytelling is a core principle of humanity in my mind. And to be able to like capture an idea, an emotion of a time or a moment or just an era, even like in your life, and put that into something that many can relate to more than just you. It's a powerful thing, and to hear people who have refined it, like you said, like 100 times down to the simplest version of it, and something
Right.
that can fit neatly into a 3-minute song, and then put that out there and have it connect with so many people. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And for me, listening to you as a songwriter, I'm like, man, this is a guy who you haven't been doing it that long, but for you to have been as successful as you've been, and have gotten the reception that you've gotten from Long Way From Home and the Brown Haired Blue Eyed Baby, the other songs you've put out, is like, it's amazing to see on from the outside looking
Thank
in.
you, man.
But two, I'm just curious to you, like what the storytelling aspect of for you and just people, humanity, how important is that to you to tell your story and other stories as you're writing lyrics?
Yeah, it's super important. I'm to be honest, I mean, as anybody listening can tell, I'm not great at I haven't necessarily mastered the refining the story. I love to talk and blabbing away at this whole podcast, but I learned a lot from my grandfather, Johnny, my dad's dad, and just there's something about. I'll say this: I was fortunate to spend a lot of time with my grandparents, and I mean, every single Friday night, that was the deal. I spent the night with my grandparents. So, and summers were spent mowing lawns with my granddad. I didn't get to really get to go out with my buddies after, spring training in the mornings with football. Like, it was just, or summer, camps, whatever. Just, I was working and hanging out with them. And so at the time, that was like a negative thing. But now looking back, it's like, man, I learned so much from my granddad. And I think one of the best things that I was able to take, I mean, he's still living. I talk like he's passed, but he's still alive. So we get to hang out every once in a while. But something that he gave me is just like a love for people, love for spending time with people, a love for telling stories, listening to other people. I know this is a podcast where I'm maybe I'm supposed to talk the most, but I love to hear what other people have to say, and I'm not trying to force it. It's just watching him do that and making people feel loved and cared for because you want to hear what they have to say. Well, that begins a conversation, and in a conversation, stories bloom, and then you can take those stories, whether they're shared with you or you come up with it while talking to somebody. And yeah, I mean, that's storytelling, telling it in the most simplest form that someone else can take and then share it with somebody else. Yeah. Stories are meant to be shared. Mm-hmm. And so that's just songwriting. Songwriting is storytelling with melody. And melody is what makes songs have the capacity to be shared more than the stories themselves, because it's another medium that is attached to the story. Mm-hmm. We love stories, and as humans, we love melody. Mm-hmm. We love a tune. We love, whatever.
Yeah, it gets stuck in your head. It reminds you of maybe the story again and again and again because that melody is caught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we listen to music, the first time we hear a song, we don't understand what it's about. We don't really listen to the words. We just hear the melody. That's what hits our brains. Then we memorize that melody if we fall in love with that melody and we hear it over and over and over, then we start to learn the words. Then we start to dissect what those words mean. We understand the story. And then we're bought in for life, where we want to buy in to everything that it has. And that's the music business. Mm-hmm. That's what, it's no different than any other small business. It's a commodity that can be shared, and that's what songwriters are doing. They are making and creating stories for other people to have that hopefully makes their life better.
Mm-hmm.
To wrap it up, I would love if we could hear, Kyle, you had a song you wanted to hear. JD also said he has some new music. I would love to hear a song.
Yeah. Kyle, I think that's a great idea. JD, I know you talked a lot about the process behind Long Way From Home, the song itself, and the lyrics behind it. If you want to play that song on here right now, let the people hear like the live version of it. I think that'd be really cool.
Okay. I could do that.
Oh, we're good.
All right. This is Long Way From Home. I read the letter you sent this morning. I drank my coffee and imagined you here. The weather's good, but they say rain's coming. Will you buy me a plane ticket out there? 'Cause I could use a time out or two from this playground. Yeah, I don't even wanna hear another sound, but I can't just stop now. And Mama, I know I'm a long way from home, but this old dirt road keeps on going, and these dreams of mine, they just don't end. Yeah, Mama, I sure miss you. Don't you cry. I'm trying to be there by supper time, but I can't promise you that. Well, tonight I might be all alone, but I ain't on my own, even though I'm a long way from home. Said they like my songs, keep on writing. If I lost more weight, they might like what they see. I hope these rhymes and stories don't stop coming. And maybe Dad was right when he said it ain't what it's cracked up to me. Mama, I know I'm a long way from home, but this old dirt road keeps on going, and these dreams of mine, they just don't end. Yeah, Mama, I sure miss you. Don't you cry. I'm trying to be there by supper time, but I can't promise you that. Well, tonight I might be all alone, but I ain't on my own, even though I'm a long way from home. Where they say it's a 10-year town, what have I got to prove? I am playing the clown, running from the rodeo bull. If I'd known it'd be this hard, I would have stayed home a little bit longer. Oh, Mama, I know I'm a long way from home, but this old dirt road
keeps on going, and these dreams of mine, they just don't end. Yeah, mama, I sure miss you. Don't you cry, I'ma try and be there by supper time. I can promise you that with tonight I might be all alone, but I ain't on my